Welcome to the quietest ones in the room with your host, Trey. I gotta say it. Just the mere fact that you have clicked onto this video and you are listening to the sound of my voice, you by far are the most intelligent people on the face of the planet. So once again, thank you for joining me. Once again, the clown of the day is here, and he goes by the name of Robert Kiyosaki. You probably heard the name before. He is the author of the book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So recently, Robert decided to touch on a touchy subject: housing, home ownership to be specific. He took a controversial stance, as he has done in the past, that a personal residence is not an asset but a liability. He decides that he's going to define an asset as something that puts money into your pocket while a liability takes money out. So he's essentially saying if it's not cash flowing, it's not an asset. To live in your home and have to pay taxes and your mortgage and your insurance and maintenance, his argument is that it's a liability. Because the only way to get money out of the home is to sell it and realize the gains. But he positions it as if you are relying on a home as an asset, you are a speculator. You are essentially gambling your financial stability on something that you cannot control. He argues that instead of buying a home, start a business, or have something like a rental property, make other investments that produce you a cash flow. Now, I want to say this. I've listened to Robert talk for over a decade now, and I think he has so many foolish takes, and I think this is one of them. And it's really insensitive and stubborn of him to take this position, especially in 2025, as wealth inequality is increasing. The idea of home ownership is becoming ever more difficult. And home ownership aside, everything is just expensive right now. But more than anything, when it comes to what people want in this country, what they consider an asset, if they could just have a hold of it, it's higher wages and home ownership. Now, everyone doesn't want to own a home, but a large amount of Americans actually do, and more people would actually like to own a home. See, he didn't go into the argument about how, well, you really don't own your home, especially if you took out a loan because you put down 3% to 5% or 20% down on the home, so the banks actually own it. He didn't go with that argument. He stayed in the lane that simply maintaining the home makes it a liability. And I think it's a silly argument. It's his way of taking a definition of what an asset is and redefining it. It's not the conventional definition in the way that he's approaching it. Most financial institutions and accountants consider a home an asset because it has value and can be sold or leveraged, like Bitcoin, like an Apple stock. Now, a home isn't as liquid as those assets, meaning you can't sell it as quickly. Well, I would say selling homes, especially in this market right now, not so much, but in the past during the pandemic, it was crazy how fast a home would sell and how competitive it was. So that shifts, but it's never as liquid as something like Bitcoin or stocks. And he's ignoring the real world benefits of home ownership. Obviously, the appreciation of the home. Most times, home values go up over time. Can you imagine if you had purchased a home 40 years ago in San Francisco or LA? or New York City, Miami, Florida, and you sold it today. So again, he's being silly. It's also that a home is an equity machine, an equity builder. You're putting money into an owned asset, not into a landlord's pocket, which you do when you rent. And I'm not against renting because everyone's situation is different financially. So you have to figure out what works best for you. But another big piece of home ownership is its stability. So even if he wants to call it a liability, which I think is foolish, you're really just going to discount the fact that it stabilizes many people's lives. People live in homes with their children and their spouses, and they thrive living in a community that works for them. They're able to save more money by having a mortgage with a fixed interest rate. While there may be increases over time with the mortgage because of insurance and taxes, etc., to own the home, it doesn't compete with rental properties in terms of how those prices have risen. I know nothing better than when I'm talking to someone and they're living in a home that's paid for, the peace that they have. And if it ever came to knowing that if they sold the home, they would have cash to do whatever else they need to do. Now, I'm not saying that, again, home ownership is for everyone, but for those who desire it, to call it a liability is, again, foolish. He's oversimplifying the complexity of what people desire. And while I get there's an emotional component to home ownership, that's really not the point. It's the stability. It's the equity that you can gain over time through appreciation. It's the memories that you can develop and create in the atmosphere. So his oversimplification doesn't work for me. Maybe you listen to Robert and you think what he's saying is spot on. But if you do agree with him, I want to know if you own a home and what is your nightmare story that you still own the home and it's a liability? Or are most people who agree with him actually renters and have never actually owned a home? I don't know. I'm very curious to find this out. You know, his philosophy assumes you have enough disposable income to buy rental properties or businesses, which isn't realistic for the average person living paycheck to paycheck or is raising a family. So his assumption is, oh, don't worry about a home, start a business and you can cash flow through that. That's an asset. But so many people don't have enough money to start the businesses that they wish to. And I'm not trying to make excuses here, but what I am saying is Robert is making a push and building an idea that you can just pull money out of thin air and forego home ownership and just start other cash flow opportunities, which he calls assets. And let's not forget, rental properties and entrepreneurship is risky. It's not for everyone. I've had multiple businesses. I have businesses now, and I've had businesses that have failed. I've learned from them, but they failed. I've never owned rental properties, but I've talked to those who have rental properties, and the nightmare stories you hear of people destroying their properties is a problem. If someone's not living in your rental property, you have to fit the bill until you find someone to live there. These things are not for everyone. Being a landlord and a business owner isn't for everyone. So no, obviously your house is never going to be a cash flowing asset unless you use it as a rental. But it's still a foundational part of long-term wealth. Most people find that they're going to have their wealth in the home that they own. I like to think of a home as essentially a piggy bank that you're putting money into until one day you decide you need to sell it or access the equity to do something else. Simply, Robert and people like him, the so-called financial gurus, should be ignored for many of the things they say. Not all the things they say, but many of the things they say. Many have said that the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad has been a major influence in their lives, and maybe so. But it doesn't mean that his take on a house being a liability versus an asset is accurate, because it's not. And so to anyone out there who is thinking about what Robert said and whether or not you should buy a home if it works for you. If it's in the community you want to be in, if it's what you've always wanted to do, if it's going to save you money, do it. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. Do what's best for you. And if you have a family, do what's best for you and your family. We do not often regret the things that we actually want to do, and we count up the cost and we plan and we do them. But, allowing these, they're not even economists, allowing these so-called gurus to dictate what you do with your hard-earned money, I think is silly. And that's why they make so much money, because they really do convince people that they know better about your situation than you do. And so you buy their books, you go to their conferences, you buy their merch, and they get rich off these things. But I'm here to sound the alarm on people like Robert and many more over time, that you don't get to say whatever you want to say and think it makes sense when it actually doesn't. So anyhow, please share your thoughts in the comment section. Maybe you agree with Robert. I completely disagree, and therefore he is clown of the day. Let me know if you own a home, if you don't, if you rent, if you are living in your car, whatever your situation is. Is it an asset or a liability in your mind? It's very difficult with these interest rates and to qualify a mortgage today. So I get why so many people are foregoing it. But if you can do it, it can set you up really nice. I just wish the interest rates were much lower. I don't know when they'll ever come down to where they were. I ended up getting a home and my interest rate is 2.9%. And I don't know when it's ever coming back down to that again. But it doesn't have to. You just have to figure out what works for you. I know people who've been buying homes over the last 5 years with these higher interest rates, and they love their decisions. There are many builders who have incentives when you're buying in these new development communities. And so there are many options to get the home you want. But anyhow, please like, share, and subscribe. I want to thank each and every one of you for checking out my content, for engaging. You definitely keep me motivated and inspired to continue to do this day after day. I have a goal to be the most, no, let me say this. I want to be known as the hardest worker on YouTube. That is my goal. So I'm trying to find a way to pump out more content. Eventually I will, but I am at least going to show up most days. I show up literally every day, but I'm going to try to do more content and spice things up by adding some different type of content. Maybe bring another creator on to add another space that you, ladies and gentlemen, will enjoy. But nonetheless, until then, I will keep doing this, and I appreciate you, like I said, once again. And as always, until next time.